I met the artist SCassemblage09APR13 in the 1980s, but we saw each other more often after he married my friend Svetlana.
Svetlana?
Sinclair was born in Brazil, started his career in New York City, then lived in Paris for several years before returning to live in New York in 2012. The year 7 of his sculptures were exhibited in a public art show that ran for 4 months on Broadway from Columbus Circle up to Washington Heights. In November 2012, Sinclair took me on a ride to see all 7 sculptures. We decided to see them going north to south, so we first headed uptown on a long drive that gave us time to reconnect and to chat about his sculptures. And why the wind?
Because it looks like that. First of all, it looks a little bit like somebody sowing, throwing seeds in the wind. And there is a gesture, there is a movement in the piece that, how can you show the wind? There is a great writer from my hometown in Cruz Alta called Érico Verissimo. Érico wrote in the 50s, he was translated in every language. He was a very famous writer. And he wrote a very large saga about the gauchos of that region called O Tempo e o Vento, the time and the wind. In my mind, the wind and time have always been related.
But they seem very different, the wind and time. The wind is fickle and unpredictable, and time is monotonous and continuous, and the two seem very different to me.
I don't think that time is monotonous and continuous unless you're watching at a clock. Moments change, they jump. That's the great polemics of Gaston Bachelard against Bergson and his notion of continuity. Because Bachelard believes in a time where instants are discontinuous. They follow each other, but there are gaps in between. And that allows for complete novelty, for surprise.
And does this connect with your wind piece at all?
The wind is waste, and anything that happens in the wind is gone with the wind. And when you make a sculpture, when you make a marble sculpture, you carve, you put so much effort, there's so much violence on the stone, breaking it. But all the pieces that are broken and taken away, they disappear, and what remains is pristine. It's the original stone. All the rest is gone. The dust goes with the wind, and what remains is the sculpture, frozen in time.
Do you think that public art, can make people grow?
Public art is very important. Art is magical. It not only makes people grow, makes them absolutely change their perspective on things, but it has to be accepted, has to be taken in. Either the work is accepted, even physically, or it's rejected. People pass, they don't look. See? That's an example.
So the next stop you say is the goddess of love?
Yeah, Aphrodite. And it's in front of Columbia University.
When you take on a topic like Aphrodite, I mean, obviously there have been many Aphrodites over the years. What mark on Aphrodite did you want to make with this piece?
Love is a dictatorship. Love is a dangerous thing. And I made a goddess of love that is very stern. She's the goddess of beauty, but she is not too beautiful herself. She's stern, she's hard.
It sounds like your view of Baudelaire. You know, he said beauty hates movement.
Beauty hates movement. Yeah. Well, that's very interesting because this piece is very, very immobile. It is not the wind. It is beauty hates movement. That's beautiful. I totally agree with that. Movement brings the grotesque. That's the difference between the classic and the Baroque. The Baroque introduced movement and introduced ugliness into art, which I love, of course. I think that in art there is, in what concerns aesthetics, in art there must be a dialectics between beauty and grotesque. I always use both.
But this sculpture is more classical, kind of.
Classical, yes. As far as a sculpture from the Pacific Islands is classical, or from Africa. It's in copper. It's a piece that I made in copper. I made it in clay and got it hammered in copper in a very rough way. She's as simple as possible, actually. She's barely a female figure. Just maybe there is a hint of female figure because of the pelvis, or
The pelvis
being that part, this part here. There are not even breasts.
No eyes either.
No eyes. I made her very primitive too, because love is very primitive, very primordial. In Greek mythology, Venus, or Aphrodite, she was a quite cruel goddess. She was not a nice kid. She was pretty bad, and not faithful either. Love is not soft in pink. It's serious business.
What is the next one?
Of a challenge, 79th. It's called In the Center, and it's a big piece in plaster. And there is a funny story about this piece. I don't know if I tell you now or later.
Go ahead.
When we installed it, next day it was immediately vandalized. Somebody had kicked it. There was marks of shoes, and somebody wrote "Down with Israel" or something stupid, some stuff, some anti-Israel slogan, not even a slogan, just phrases. Angry with the piece, so of course I came back and I repainted it, and my assistant came and he brought a can of paint, and we painted until the graffiti disappeared. But I was wondering why that was done. Because the piece has nothing to do with Israel whatsoever, as far as I could tell.
What does it have to do?
Then I realized that it's a figure with a big hat, and maybe they thought it was like a traditional, Hasidic or Jew or something. It's very funny. You make something in New York and you have no idea what's going to come out of it. So somebody who has his own agenda wherever, was not happy with that, having this piece with a big hat. But I always thought that it looked more like a priest, like a country priest, you know, Italian country priest with a hat, or a woman also, because it has a long skirt, sort. It's an ambiguous figure. Figure could be woman, man, doesn't matter, but it has a hat. And but then that was it. There was no more graffiti or anything. It was only one night.
And what does the hat have to do with that if it's not pro-Israel?
It's just a figure that without the hat it wouldn't have the same feeling. You know, a hat is always a symbol of authority. About it, there is something. It has to do with what is in the center. Let's see. Now we all imagine the unconscious, not the unconscious mind. What is in the center of the unconscious mind? Who is taking care of it?
And who's taking care of it?
I don't know, but it probably looks like that.
Almost, to me, as a lawyer, it's almost a symbol of justice, you know, right down the middle.
Right down the middle. And
Finds the
but
evil.
also looking for something.
Looking for justice.
Looking for justice. Looking for, like the diviner with the divining rod, you know, looking for water. Looking for justice. I think there is this desire for equanimity in the brain. That's part of being, you know, of being is what gives us a center to us is this desire for equanimity, for justice, for truth, you know. You know, this sense of aesthetics is the sense of what is just, what is between the heaven and the floor. You know,
Between the what and the what?
between the Baptist church and the designer shoe warehouse.
Seeing Aphrodite, because the feeling, the emotion is so different.
Yes.
Aphrodite to me was more, here I am, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
This is much more, I'm with you, I'm going to try to help you out as much as I can.
That's right. Aphrodite doesn't care about you. She doesn't care at all. This one is only about caring, being here. People react to this piece. They react to it. It's like there is a feeling of protection.
And at the same time, I know it's an accident, but protection needs itself to be protected because it needs these barriers to protect it.
That's right. It's the most fragile of all of the pieces. Maybe the one in marble is quite fragile, but this one is very fragile. It's in plaster, you know. It can be broken, can be attacked. It was the first one and the only one that was attacked and defaced as soon as it was put up.
So 4 more to go. Is my math correct?
4 more to go. See this?
Right. What's that one called?
That's called the 4.
The 4.
Yeah, the 4. It's a piece. It's some sort of a crystal or inorganic life that wants to become organic and it wants to grow, and you know you see that there is a repetition of itself, you know, on 2-3 different sizes. It's like a fractal system. It's a
It's an octaedra with it's a large octaedra with four half-size octaedra, and around each one of those four there's another four is one of a third generation.
This is the first one that feels like a different phase of your life from the other ones. No, am I wrong?
The four is a very dramatic piece, and as I was telling you before, that you said that maybe it departs a little bit from my work. It does not. My work has always had this very structural skeleton, let's say, and a very organic side. One is structural, one crystalline, the other organic, having to do with growth. You know, one side is Baroque, the other side is classic. One side is minimalist, the other side is maximalist. One side is, has to do with structure, has to do with logics, has to do with geometry. The other side has to do with growth and organic form. Because I'm attracted to those, and I see that as a polarity, and I'm attracted to polarity as well. I love the idea of playing with a dialectic system. Also, I like the idea of combining things, making them friends to each other. Where you have the philia, this friendliness, and I like the idea of things fighting with each other, with polemos and philia, friendliness and war. And I like the dialectics between those two aspects in the work, and I like those two aspects in the world as well. It's a very mythic thing, the polarity between war and love, and how they come together. And I want to show that in the work. And on the other side, there is another type of polarity, which is between the immutable and the structural, and where time stops entirely, and the other one where time is shown as flowing,
Take care, that's all right. Good. Nice to meet you.
where time really happens, where there's movement.
And four is more.
And four is more structural, of course. But at the same time, there is an interesting aspect to it, is that there is movement in it. So the form is perfectly structural, and at the same time you have movement because of that repetition of the same motive, the same form, which is an octaedra, that repeats itself in three different sizes, beginning with a large one, then goes to half of the size, and then half again. Half of the time. This is another piece. There it is. It's called The Portrait of the Word Why. This is a piece that would elicit the kind of question, why? More than other pieces that have a much more, it's much easier to explain. This one is the most difficult to explain. There are two mirrors for the legs, and one mirror held up. So the portrait is actually a mirror. Why is a mirror?
That doesn't seem... A portrait in a mirror is a paradox, isn't it? Normally a portrait is...
But not if it's the portrait of a word.
If it's a portrait of a word, it's more...
Maybe why is a mirror. When you ask why, you're You know, the Chinese rarely ask why. Nobody in my studio over there in Beijing ever asked me why I'm doing this or I'm doing that. They don't think that's an interesting question. You know, what does that mean? They don't have in mind what kind of answer they would want. This is in itself is already asking why. That is already asking to be asked why. I think a lot of my work is very self-reflective.
But a word like why is so outward looking. It's the most outward looking word there is. And
That's
yet
right.
this is and a mirror is usually inward looking. So it's paradoxical what you're doing.
You know, why is a very strange word. When you say, why did you buy yogurt? And instead of you bought heavy cream. And when you say, why is there everything rather than nothing? I don't think it's the same. It's the same thing. It's the same kind of a why. The idea of making a portrait of a word is already pretty, I find it already pretty interesting. Because portraits are of people or maybe of a landscape. You can make you know, the likeness of a landscape, the likeness of a person. But a word, on top of that, a very abstract word.
Why did you make this outdoor urban public art?
Why? Why is there everything rather than nothing? Why did you buy yogurt?
Why the wind? Why did you make this outdoor urban public art?
Why? Why is there everything rather than nothing? We always identify ourselves with our present perception, and we forget all about our past perceptions. How we perceive things in the past, we have no idea anymore.
Let's go in the car and get some heat.
Yeah. Very hot, very cold, huh? It's getting worse and worse. I always thought that the thinker of Rodin, le penseur, n'est-ce pas, de Rodin, was so muscular that he was really thinking with his muscles rather than, and he was making such a great effort. And I was thinking, what kind of thoughts coming out of this thinker? Probably not very big. He's making an enormous effort, and a physical effort, to think something. So, he looks like a brute. He's not a thinker at all. He has much more broad and brains. And he's making a tremendous effort to produce one little thought. We don't even know what it is. So I made a thinker that also is making a lot of effort to produce perhaps no thought at all. And his entire surface is a ripple with effort.
What is the material?
That's copper.
And where was it made?
It was made in Beijing as well. Imagine that every piece like that was one piece that is cut, hammered, and welded.
Just to my eyes, this looks like the hardest one to make of the ones we've seen so far.
400 pieces.
400 pieces went into this.
Yeah. There is something interesting about Buddhist meditation. I used to practice Zen when I was young. And when you start the meditation, you think there's going to be very calming and all that. It's just the opposite. A lot of unconscious material starts surfacing, is very disturbing. Meditation is not calming at all. It's very disturbing. A lot of stuff comes out and eventually becomes a little under control. But in the beginning is very, very agitated. It's like this.
The notion of thinking as effort is a very 19th century way of looking at the world.
Yeah.
It's part of the industrial. It's like we who have earned the money to run society, we really worked hard to earn it, so we deserve, we deserve our place in society.
We are the thinkers. It's very good. And this is one thinker who's doing gymnastics.
why did you have this one face downtown and not uptown?
Well, when people are jogging and they stop to to stretch their legs and all that, in general they look away from the public. They look away from people coming in. Let's say I was jogging and then I would stretch my leg here. I would do that in this direction. Yeah, I wouldn't do that facing the people. He's like stretching. He's doing a big stretch there.
It reminds me of your ceramic piece, The Artist, a little bit. The one on the table without any arms, a little bit. Am I right? Is there a connection there?
Yes, there is something there.
And how so? What would you say the connection
I
is?
didn't think about that, but now that you say, yes, I feel it. The artist is a baroque creature that is stretching on a bed. You don't know if he's dead or alive. He's very agitated. In this case, it's like he's meditating or he's sitting. In the case of the artist, he's lying down on a bed. In both cases, there is a tremendous effort. Should be resting, but they are not resting. Should be peacefully seated, and there is no rest at all.
You're telling me as I'm freezing my butt off.
There is no rest.
But now maybe my math is. How many do we have left?
What?
One left?
One left. We're done.
Civilization can be considered like an artwork.
Help me. The word vortex, to mean it means something you get sucked into.
Yeah,
that's
it
right?
got sucked in. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. This is a vertical vortex, but it goes up. It's a vortex that goes up to heaven.
But in a way, we're headed towards a vortex right now, right?
Oh, we are always in a vortex. It's called vortex.
Did you have New York in mind?
I did not have New York in mind, but when the possibility of bringing it to New York came, I thought it was fantastic, and I think it looks the best here. I was very happy with the idea of bringing this piece here. I made a piece similar to that for the documentary Castle. And a small version. It all began with a small version in '92 called Turning Point. It was all colorful, but this one I didn't want to make with artificial colors. I decided to make mirrors, so it just takes the color from the environment.
Which is perfect for urban art, isn't it?
Yeah. It makes the work a little bit invisible as well. It's very strange, but a lot of people don't really see it. It blends in.
Right.
There is a chameleon sort of quality to it. The way it reflects the environment is very strange. You know, you don't really know if it's there, like a screen in a way, a curved screen. Sometimes I feel that it's taking everything from and bringing it up to the sky. You know, I started using those mirror surface because it's a way of getting a lot of color on your piece without really painting it. You know, it gets the color from the environment. It's quite, you know, you're stealing colors. It's a good way of just getting it from wherever it comes.
Right. You make me think of Picasso saying, you know, an artist is the one who steals other people's
Ideas, yeah.
and gets away with it, right?
Right. I'm stealing colors from everywhere.
How did you make this vortex piece?
Well, I made it the size it is now in steel and clay. Of course, I used assistants to do that, but I make a point of making myself the original the original piece, because many artists they just give a maquette, they give a small model and give to fabricators to make the large piece. I make a point of making every one of my pieces myself, of course with the help of assistants, since it's a very large piece. Because I like to improvise throughout the process. I don't come up with I think that the art process should be an adventure, and I really believe in improvisation, and that things come out naturally in the end.
In my mind, I always thought of your art as an East Side art. So how does it feel to have your art on the West Side?
My art in the West Side. Listen, I'm so happy to be back in New York. That East, West, or whatever you call it, as long as it's New York, it's a thrill to me. It's absolutely fantastic. For a concourse of circumstance, I stayed in Europe for quite a while, and it was great. But coming back home, it's something else.